Hi there, welcome to another episode. So we are in the middle of January now, and that's a great time to start pruning your trees and shrubs. In general, you can start pruning the minute that they lose their leaves, but I really like to wait until January and February, so they're in their deep dormant stage. Now second, you can't really do anything wrong while pruning your trees or your shrubs. They're used to losing limbs, so they'll just recover over the course of the growing season, and then you can just try again the next dormant season. So don't worry too much about making bad cuts or anything. It's part of learning. So let's get to the first step.
Alright, so the first thing to do is to remove the triple D, which is dead, damaged and diseased branches. So I've got a dead branch here, I've got another one over here. These likely got shaded out. You just want to remove those because it just causes congestion. They don't need to be there. So just snip those off, flush. And that's that. Let's get on to the next one. This entire trunk on this rose unfortunately died off. So I'm just going to remove the whole thing. Just like so. So the second point is to remove anything that grows at the base of an existing branch. So like right here, this is just, I would not leave this. Over here, this is going to be a third branch and it's already in a crotch where two branches are. So I'd remove this one. This one is too low down, I'd remove that. There's more buds of branches that are starting down here. Another one on this side too. Those are all things that I would remove. Here's another example. At the base of this current, there's a bunch of branches that were starting to form. All these little whitish dots was a new branch. I would remove all of that. It's just going to congest your shrub. So one more example is on this apple tree. I have this branch that formed here. I would absolutely remove this one because I got this branch that's coming out nice and horizontal and then slowly goes up. That's what I want. This is just going to create a bulge here, and I've got the same scenario happening in this branch behind here. I would remove this branch here.
So the next two I don't have an example of, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I guess. But that's watersprouts and suckers. A water sprout is often seen in apples, and you'll have a nice horizontal branch that slowly curves up, and then you'll have that usually thicker branch that shoots straight up somewhere along that main branch there. Now those are the branches that you want to remove ideally in the dormant season. That's when I would recommend doing it, and I would just remove all of those because they usually don't produce fruit, or they produce very minimal fruit, so it's not even really productive for you to keep them. So I would remove all that in the dormant season. And then the other one was suckers, and suckers are also often seen in apple trees, and fortunately my apples are not doing any of those things yet, so that's good. But a sucker will usually come up from the root system. All along the root system there could be another bud that forms. It'll shoot up another apple. It's usually the rootstocks and not the variety that you're growing, so it's not going to produce even fruit. And so that's something that I would also definitely recommend removing. You could do this at any time of year. You can wait until the dormant season, but realistically you could just remove those in the growing season as well, because you just really don't want them to be there. They congest, they suck energy away from your main apple tree, so you just want to remove all of that as well. But I'm sorry, don't have examples to show you.
Alright, so the next point is crossing branches, and specifically this one here is crossing over this branch here. So you'd want to decide which one of these two you want to keep. And this is one of those things, you can't really do it wrong. If you do one thing now and you decide to change it up later, well, that's okay too. I actually kind of like this branch here because it is a horizontal branch and it has pretty good division on it. So I'm just going to remove this branch here. Let's come in, snip that off. So another example is actually just right down below it. You can see that this branch here is starting to grow into this one here. Now this is a horizontal branch that's down lower on the tree, so I don't really want any vertical growth here yet. I want these to just keep on going on horizontally, and as you go higher up the tree, that's when I want to see more vertical branches. So I actually am just going to remove this branch here in favor of the one that's below it that's growing more horizontal. And now that one has more space to grow. So kind of an escalation from crossing branches is if then that branch starts to rub up against the trunk. So here you can see this branch is rubbing up against this branch here. What that can do is it can rub off the bark and let bacteria and bad fungus into the branch and start killing it off, or even let it into the entire tree and do even more detrimental damage to the tree. So you'd want to remove either one of these. Now in this case I'm just going to remove this one because it's younger. This one is much more established, but you don't want branches to rub up against each other. So I'm just going to cut this off as flush as I can, like so. The next couple of points are a little bit more advanced, but I wanted to bring them up anyway in case you wanted to try your hand at it. And that is to replace leaders or reduce the amount of leaders that you already have. You don't need, in this case, essentially 3 leaders here. So you could reduce the height a little bit by replacing these 2 leaders here, but just down to this third one that's down here. Can't see it quite as well, but this one here. That reduces the height a little bit. You only need 1 central leader to take over the apex, and then you have these more horizontal branches that are all going to compete for that apical dominance, distributing the energy better. So I would take it down to that third leader here, and then letting these slightly more horizontal branches fill in everywhere else. And lastly, it's branches that occupy a similar space. So here you can see that they're coming out at a similar direction. Ideally, you have a branch that goes north, a branch that goes east, a branch that goes south, and a branch that goes west. Just so they all have their own space of light. I like to have a little bit more branches than just the 4, but that's kind of the general direction that you're going for, that every branch has its own spot of light. These 2 are going to be competing for light. So ideally, you would pick one or the other. So that's all I can think of right now. I will hope that you learned something from all of these things. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll get to them as soon as possible. But for now, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Tot de volgende keer.